Hey guys, what's up? Welcome in to Rolling with T-Bone. I'm so glad you guys are here. Hey, if you're new here, let me say first, welcome in. If you found us with all of the YouTube noise going on, with all the content creators, and you found my channel, thank you. I'm so glad you decided to click onto this episode. But hey, if you are new here, stick around to the end of this episode and I'll talk to you a little bit more. But for now, we've got an episode of Rolling with T-Bone about to start. So y'all grab your favorite beverage, grab your favorite snack, sit down in your favorite spot, and let's get on with the episode. Seriously guys, Rolling with T-Bone's about to start. Let's go.
T-Bone rolls the engine loud. Dust kicks up like a stormy cloud. Wheels spin fast, the gravel flies, chasing echoes through the skies. Deep in the mountains, steep and wild, roads twist sharp, they stretch for miles. Leather jacket, winds cold bite, headlights piercing through the night. Ride on T-Bone, never slow, through the peaks of their shadow.
But yeah guys, I can remember talking probably 2006, 2007, somewhere along in there. I had ended up being booked on a show with Tommy Rich, and I think Buff Bagwell was there, and I want to say Virgil was there. But I had talked to, me and Tommy and Buff had kind of sat in the locker room and we were talking. And I asked Tommy Rich, I said, what do y'all think about TNA? Meaning, what did the season guys think of TNA and how things were going? And, you know, I can remember Tommy just saying, hey, you know, I'll go there for a paycheck, but I would not want to sign any kind of contract with them. Now, during this time, and if any of y'all watched TNA in the beginning, Buff Bagwell, Marcus Alexander Bagwell, who began his career in WCW, and listen guys, back in the 90s and early 2000s, Buff Bagwell was a major talent. I mean, he had ring talent like you wouldn't believe. Buff could get into the ring and do anything he wanted to do. He had, by the time the New World Order had came along, Marcus had already been in WCW for a while. He had a couple of tag team runs. Of course, the most famous one being with Scotty Riggs as the American Males, but he had tagged once with the Patriot. He tagged again with somebody else. You know, they were trying to set Bagwell up to be a tag team specialist, but he was a great independent wrestler. He had a tag team run with Scott Steiner, but Buff was going to go to TNA because I talked to Buff on the phone quite a bit, and through Terry Lawler I met, you know, got to meet him, and through Steve Lawler and Tommy Rich. But I'd have conversations with Buff, but Buff just never could get launched in TNA. You know, and I talked to Buff one night. It was Halloween night actually. He had called me one Halloween night and we were talking, and I asked him, I said, how's the talks with TNA going? And he said, we're so far apart on money right now. And listen, you know, Buff had the right to demand money. I mean, he was a star for WCW. He had a run in WWE. I mean, his run in WWE after Vince bought WCW was a short run, but he was there for a while. And at the time, they were trying to make him a main eventer, but he just Buff ended up getting buried in what would be a over collection of talent. I mean, you had the established WWE guys, and then now you had this new influx of talent coming from WCW with Booker T and Diamond Dallas Page and Bagwell, and just a ton of talent that came, you know, from WCW. Of course, you would have talent that would easily adapt the WWE style, and then you had some that just never could launch. And Buff happened to be one who could never launch with WWE. And, you know, I talked to him a couple of times, and then other people would talk to me about Buff and TNA. You know, Buff fought his demons. He's been very open about that. He's been very public about, you know, issues that he was having back then. He's not hid anything from the public. Buff had his demons, and, you know, was it one of those things where TNA, where the powers that be, was it one of those things where they were afraid to invest in him? It could have been, because they were invested pretty heavy in Scott Steiner. Now, anybody who's watched Scott Steiner, from the time him and Rick separated in WCW, they would split. The Steiner brothers would split in two. And Scott would start kind of his solo career. Everybody who worked with Scott knew he was a loose cannon. He just was, you know, Scott, you know, again, was it one of those things where he was a liability, you know, steroids or whatever. You know, you don't want to make those kind of accusations, but for whatever reason, TNA was trying to do their best with Scott Steiner, because Scott was a main event draw. Scott was a big draw. I mean, he had spent time in WWF and WCW with Rick as tag teams, and then he would end up doing a short run in WWE where he would have a, you know, most people who got brought in with any kind of star power, Triple H was their measuring stick. So he came in and he had a run with Triple H, and for whatever reason, Steiner just never could, you know, being a Southern wrestler, I guess, coming from the WCW territory, I guess it was just hard for him to adapt to the WWE style. Same with Buff. I think Buff just had a hard time adapting to the WWE style. So it was kind of one of those things where they would get buried in the overabundance of talent. And it was sad, because had TNA been able to launch cleanly with Buff Bagwell, I think Bagwell, had they pushed him, had they promoted him properly and used Bagwell properly, I think Buff Bagwell could have took TNA over the hump. I think he could have really helped them get the company launched. You know, I know Marcus. I've talked to him. I've met him. I've hung out with him back in 2006, 2007. Just a genuine human being. I bought a Volvo that his grandpa had owned. You know, Buff was just a great guy. He, you know, he knew he was, you know, famous, but he never let that go to his head. He never said, I'm better than everybody else. You know, he had a gimmick in the ring, but outside of the ring, he was just a great guy. I think had they been able to launch with Buff, had they got out of the gate, had they promoted him properly, like I said, I think he could have took TNA on to the limit. But, you know, it's sad, because by the time, you know, by the time somebody figured out that the TNA ship was full of holes, it was already sinking. Or the original version of TNA was already sinking. You know, it's sad, because you look back at that time during whatever era you want to call it, the Attitude Era, you know, whatever you want to call it. You had WCW, you had WWE, you had ECW, which is a whole nother world. You had plenty of talent. I mean, when you look back at those rosters and how deep they were, WCW with Bill Goldberg being kind of the homegrown talent for WCW. You had Booker T, Scott Steiner, Rick Steiner. You had Ric Flair, Sting, the Lex Luger. The talent was there, but nobody knew how to handle it. ECW was kind of the same thing. Paul Heyman, who ran ECW, before Vince bought it. You know, a small Philadelphia program that started out, you know, with guys like Tommy Dreamer and the Sandman, and then Taz would come along. And then you look at the WWE roster, you had Steve Austin, Undertaker, The Rock, Kane, the New Age Outlaws. I mean, you had a deep, the Godfather, D'Lo Brown, Farouk, Bradshaw. You had a deep well to draw talent from, and you know, had somebody in WCW and somebody in TNA, had somebody been paying attention to the holes that were being put in the company, they might have could have saved them from going under. But you know, TNA would eventually just basically walk away from what had brought them to the dance, the six-sided ring, the homegrown talent. They would eventually walk away from that, and in walking away from it, they just got lost in the shuffle. They became just another wrestling show. And you hate to see that. It's sad that happened. You know, but it kind of told me the story that night, because we were in Dalton, Georgia, at the Dalton Fairgrounds. Chief Little Lynn was doing the show. And man, Kenchi, who was from TNA, was there. David, he was his moniker was he was the reinventor of the DDT. David something, he was there, and he had spent time in TNA. Tommy Rich was there. Buff was there. I want to say Virgil was there. But, you know, just talking to Tommy, because I had known Tommy for a while. Tommy was actually in one of my first show that I did for N.W.A. Tommy and Steve Lawler was on top in the main event that night. So I had known Tommy for a little while, and, you know, me and him sat back there in the locker room, and I asked him, you know, again, like I said a minute ago, I asked him how these seasoned guys felt about TNA, and, you know, it just seemed like guys like him, Dutch Mantell, Jim Cornette, the guys who had been in the business for a while, they were kind of seeing what we couldn't see on the outside, but they were passing through on the inside, and they were seeing what was going on. And Tommy told me, he said, at the time I talked to him, he said, it's going to be bad. He said, it's just another typical locker room. And, you know, you never want to get branded like that. You always want to have something that will make your promotion stand out away from everybody else. Now, when N.W.A, you know, basically collapsed after Ted Turner sold WCW, you would see a change in wrestling. And it was a good change. I mean, coming through the mid-90s, guys, wrestling grew. WCW was on top. They had the hot hand with the NWO. And then the momentum swung back when Steve Austin hit big, Stone Cold hit big. You know, what a fun time to just be a wrestling fan. I've always said that. It was what an amazing time just to be a wrestling fan. Because on the independent circuit, we was watching what those guys were doing. You know, Hogan going dark for the first time. Hogan becoming a bad guy for the first time with the NWO. Steve Austin, who was a heel, but was getting cheers. You know, he was the number one talent in all of professional wrestling. That was showing us that the average wrestling fan was changing, more edgy. It was, you know, we were the Gen X. A lot of those guys came from Generation X. So it was a fun time to just be a professional wrestling fan. And man, what a lot of great memories. But if y'all like this stuff, guys, we'll keep talking. We'll talk about all kinds of different stuff. I like wrestling. I like talking wrestling because from the time I was, I don't know, 10-year-old until about 2009 when I kind of backed away from everything. 2010 was, I think 2010 or 11. No, it was 2012 was when I took my last booking that I took. was in White County. But yeah, I like talking about this stuff. All right, guys, so that was tonight's episode of Rolling with T-Bone. I hope y'all enjoyed it. If you're new here, I asked you if you would to stick around to the end of this episode, and I'd talk to you again. Guys, what I would like for you to do from here is go backwards. Don't hit the subscribe button just yet, because I'm not for everyone, and I understand that. But what I would like for you to do, guys, I have over 5 years, over 400 episodes worth of Rolling with T-Bone for you to check out. You might even find an episode that's right for you. Then if you like what you see, you think we might be right for you, consider hitting the subscribe button and becoming a part of the Rolling with T-Bone crew. We would love to have you here. But guys, to the old ones who are here, to the OGs, I love you. Y'all are the reason I keep doing this. Guys, until the next time though, I got work to do. So y'all remember, like, share, comment, go backwards, watch, and subscribe. Guys, until the next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and as always, thank you for watching.